Welcome to the Bullseye Breakdown, the podcast where CEOs, founders, and leaders of industry break down big decisions, big wins, and big lessons. No fluff, just real talk. Let's get into it. This is the Bullseye Breakdown. Welcome back to Bullseye Breakdown, where we cut through the noise and dive deep into the minds of industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries shaping the future of business. Today, I am joined by Ezra Menaged, a key player behind HomeTalk and now an integral part of VerticalScope, one of the largest digital communities in the world. Ezra has built a powerhouse platform where DIYers, creators, and hobbyists come together, and after HomeTalk's acquisition by VerticalScope, he's been driving innovation on an even bigger scale. We're going to talk about the art of building engaged online communities, what it takes to keep millions of users hooked, and where the future of digital platforms is headed. This is Bullseye Breakdown. Let's get into it. Ezra, welcome to Bullseye Breakdown.
Hey, Dustin. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. This is something that is so intriguing to me, what you have built and how it's scaled and where you pivoted and where you got to and everything that you guys are doing. It's something that I find a necessity for my clients on a regular basis. And I'm excited to hear a little bit more about where you are projecting this to go in the future. But before we get too far into that, can you tell me a little bit about how this all started? Where did HomeTalk come from?
Yeah. So HomeTalk has a super interesting story in the digital media landscape. We started off in 2010. We're basically the entrepreneur of HomeTalk. Yaron Ben Sholem, the CEO at the time, created HomeTalk in order to create a bridge between job by a contractor and another job. Like there's this tendency of like when you need something for your home, you bring a contractor in order to like fix that thing. But by the time that next time that happens, a few months have gone by in the best case scenario, and you barely remember who that person was. So Yaron created a company at the time that was all about connecting contractors to homeowners that need jobs done, basically. And HomeTalk was created in order to try to bridge that gap with content. Very quickly, the company saw that the content wasn't being created by contractors because they're busy people and they have to like actually go, do the actual work that they're being paid for. So the company pivoted pretty quickly into DIYers putting content on the site. And what happened thereout was that more and more content was created by DIYers, bloggers, and so on and so forth. And the company pivoted into becoming a digital, like a publisher basically, pretty much at the time, for DIY home and garden topic, basically. But in a way that's different than the way you think about most publishers. When you think about most publishers, you think about an operation that is basically, you have a basic tech stack, which is a website, you have some content written by your editors and writers, and you have some form of like basic distribution. So because we very quickly pivoted to becoming a community-based platform that had a lot of content coming in from various DIYers, we basically had to think more along the lines of like really being a platform rather than being a publisher. And we built out quite a lot of tech over those years between 2010 to 2016 in order to support this operation. And what happened thereafter was we said, okay, we have like tons and tons of users. And this was like alongside the growth of Facebook. And we started like aggregating tons and tons of users around a certain topic. And we said, okay, if we've got all these people around a certain subject, we must be able to like build something for them. And this was around the same time that I joined the company. I joined the company in 2016. And the company pivoted into trying to build out a product for those people. Because like the assumption was if you have all these people with a common interest, you're going to be able to build out a product for them. So we took our tech orientation, our product mindset, and pivoted towards trying to like build out a product on top of our media site, basically. And thereafter, we pursued this vision of like building out a specific product. At the time, it was connecting between DIYers and people that would come help them do that specific project. So like imagine if you wanted to build a deck outdoors, you would basically need somebody to help you if you're not completely capable of doing that. And we wanted to create like sort of the task rabbit for DIY and sort of do it with you, not do it for you. And we worked on that for like 2 years. We're a company based in Jerusalem, and we were shuttling people over to Houston in order to really try to like build that out. And after a while, we realized, like after 2 years, we basically realized that we were in the direction of like more like a solution looking for a problem in a sense rather than the other way around. And it took us some time, but we basically decided to like really shut that down as a company. And I was like, far from decision making at that point. I was like really focused on ad tech. And after we shut that down, we had 2 years of like, wandering to try to like figure out, okay, what's next for us as far as like how do we layer on a product on top of that asset that we have, which is this platform for DIYers. Meaning, think of like Pinterest for DIYers in a sense, but with all the content on the site. And we wandered around for 2 years. We didn't really find anything. And then, COVID hit and we had to like, find our metal. And thereafter it was pretty trying because of that period of time that we had to figure things out. And we pivoted into what we are today, which is a newsletter publisher on top of what we've already built. So that's like a very short, like abbreviated story here, like as far as like how we got to where we are.
It's very interesting because you guys have a lot going on there, right? As we unpack that, you guys are based in Jerusalem. You're trying to run a generally US-based company. You have multiple different pivots, multiple different opportunities being pressed against you in the course of the past 15 years. And you have taken each one of those opportunities in stride, and you have found what that growth opportunity is, that scalability. Being agile like that is not something that everybody can do. How do you find yourself in those situations looking at those opportunities to make pivots and changes and just saying, hey, let's go for it?
It's a great question. So basically, if I go back to each one of those critical moments of pivots, and much of those were before my time, like even the pivots in 2016 and 2013, or before my time. Like I think that there is a very strong company DNA that fosters that and empowers you to do that and empowers you to have the confidence to come out on the other side. We've had multiple moments. Like I wouldn't say that 2013 was necessarily a moment of that because like things were going amazingly back then. It was like the heyday of Facebook. We kept getting traffic. Okay, so we had to pivot as far as like how to get content. And that story is like, a long story in its own. But in 2016 and then again in 2020, we had to make these very big pivots because the industry that we're in is a tough one. It's a very, very hard industry because you're being controlled by various different algorithms and you're sort of like walking through the raindrops and walking through the giants as far as like Amazon and Facebook and Google. And it's tough because like, let's be honest, these things keep changing all the time. If you're dependent on Amazon, you're dependent on their algorithm changes. If you're dependent on Facebook, you're dependent on their algorithms, and same thing for Google. And each one of these algorithm tweaks, each one of these, giants scratching its nose can like, blow you away. And in a sense, I think that what has always prepared us as a company and how we approach it is we're always very diverse, meaning we're always super diverse on our business model and we're very lean, very nimble, very quick. Like, as I think about each of those instances where we encountered a serious challenge, we looked at ourselves in the mirror. We knew that we have all the serious players on board in our team to make anything we want happen. And we always had something in the fire, like baking, to like try to like launch the next thing. And I think that the confidence and the fact that you have an amazing team, you're very diverse as far as what you're doing, and you always have something going on in the background that's something else, and you're fast and nimble to execute on something in a serious way is what really has like done the magic for us at every point where we could have gotten crushed by any one of these pivots. When I think about the pivots, like, Facebook 2018, stopping traffic, we used to get like 2 million sessions a day from Facebook. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, Facebook reduced that to 40,000 a day. Okay, that usually crushes companies. We had Facebook in 2020 remove Messenger, and Messenger, we had like 200,000 sessions a day that reduced to zero. like in March 2020. Then COVID hit at the same time. Now those two things in combo, again, could have like completely wiped us out. And every one of these things like is like something that if you're not positioned in the right way, you find yourself flat-footed and you get wiped out. And I think that really what has consistently helped us is those three things, meaning the people, the diversity of things that we're doing and initiatives and business lines, and the nimbleness and the quickness like that allows us to react to any one of those instances.
It's all integral and it's all very much symbiotic, because if you are agile, in order to be agile and nimble, you have to have a team that knows what they're doing, that is self-driven aside from the task that they are given at hand, to make sure that they go above and beyond. You have to be ready for that anyway, just due to the algorithmic changes that happen on a day-to-day basis. And to your point, you never know when that's going to change. So all those different angles and, having the flexibility, having the malleability to make those moves and choose directions and find a course correct, and then go full throttle at that, has brought you to now where you are with VerticalScope. Being under VerticalScope, which VerticalScope is based out of Ontario, correct? Canada? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So you guys now are working as HomeTalk under VerticalScope, and now you have another kind of set of generalized constraints and working conditions where you're working with somebody who has acquired you that is based out of Canada, and you're working out of Jerusalem still. That in its own offers so many hosts of problems. Are you guys working through that great? Like, how did that affect once you actually came under? Like, is there problems that you work with on a day-to-day basis, or have you guys smoothed that out?
I think that pretty much was also sort of like smoothed out from day one of taking on this job, to be honest. I fortunately and unfortunately come from an attorney as a background. So like basically I was used to this crazy work ethic of like working 12-hour days. And like when I joined this company, I think it was like I joined as a junior person in this company, as like sort of like an ad tech analyst in a sense. And when I joined, I knew that, I wanted to succeed here. So I said, I might as well carry on that work ethic into my next job. Why not? I'm already used to it anyhow. And I carried that in, and, okay, it was good that I did, because a lot of the working hours are US working hours. You work with tons of ad tech companies, like in the initial role that I started off at. And like it's sort of like you also work US hours. Like, the work day is probably over at like 2 Eastern on most days anyhow. So the transition was very smooth, like from that aspect. And even though we're like a 40-person company here, like the layer of the people that interface with the Eastern times is like more the team that are like myself, love working. What's the joy of working? So why not? We do those weird odd hours to like make it all happen. It's also what provides speed. At the end of the day, if you're working with the US and you get that extra ping pong in with the emails of going back and forth and pushing that in, that adds to like the speed. We have like that in our DNA, meaning we want to get everything out like yesterday. So it hasn't really been a challenge, but it's just because of like the way that we work as a company anyhow.
That's great. And that goes back to what we were just talking about, like being able to be agile, being able to be nimble, and being able to kind of work on the fly. I resemble that note of working 12-hour days on a good day. I think you're cutting yourself short, because I know that a few times I've talked to you has been way after hours for you. Well, good. Well, that's a good pivot into the first part of the first segment of the podcast that I like to call the pressure test. And in this segment of the podcast, this is an opportunity for us to talk about kind of the trials and tribulations, even more in depth, of what you guys are working with on a day-to-day basis and how you really are making strides in your industries. With that, over the course of the past 15 years, what is one of the hardest problems that you have faced, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, so like I have, like, when I think of that question, I have like multiple different um moments in time that it's sort of like, I won't say do or die, like in a sense, like for the company, but like I have these moments in time that I remember, or like the moment of investment that we had to show a better trend going upwards. I remember like I think the moment of like understanding that we're losing our Messenger subscriber base because Facebook closed that down. But I think that the biggest moment for me, like at HomeTalk, has been the moment of March 2020. We basically finally lost a Messenger. We converted a lot of those users into app users. And at the same time, COVID hit. And this was like, troubling time, because what the combination of what happened there was we lost like the equivalent of like quite a bit of revenue. Like I think it was also like $200,000 a month or something like that. All in one chunk. And COVID hits, and CPMs on ads go down, and nobody was thinking at the time about the traffic bump that would come later, obviously. And we were like, as a management team at the time, I was the COO of the company. At the management team, we were basically like, okay, what do we do now? It was like a moment of like a real true moment in a company's like life cycle, that it's like, okay, you got to really make the decision to like try to help the company survive. So what we had to do, we were on a run rate of like losing quite a bit of money that year. And what we had to do, like for the company's survival, is we had to like let go of like, I think it was like 20 out of the 55 employees that we had at the time. And we had to, that was like extremely tough, because these were amazing, talented people, amazing people. And we were pursuing something grander at the time. Up until that point in time, we were pursuing something bigger than being, a media publisher. And that was a big hit for us, because we had these big dreams. We had a huge team, and all of a sudden you get hit. And this was like the first, I think, ever mass layoff that we've had, and of that scale. And thank God, the last. And we had to lay off that many people. And I remember there was this point in time where we had to decide, okay, what's next? Meaning, what do we do now? And this idea occurred to me of like, okay, you know what, guys, like, let's do what we're really good at. We're really good at creating newsletters. Let's go for that, but for other verticals. So we did that for, at the time, it was only HomeTalk, DIY, Home and Garden. And then we launched Food Talk, and then we launched another one. And that moment there of like starting things off, and we did it like the way we do everything. It wasn't like overnight, okay, yeah, let's just launch the site and put it out there. We did some POCs. We got the signals for those quick POCs, and we basically realized that, okay, we've got something here, meaning we have the team, we're excellent at this, we have a good strategy to execute on. Like there's almost like, a very high percentage of success, and because we know that we can do this well, like unlike a lot of the other pursuits that we had in the previous years on the product front. And that combination, like, with that realization at that point in time of like, this is it, meaning this is our company's future, like, was amazing, because we got to like, a low point in our company history that was like, shoot, like the ground is falling from under you, and it's like almost like grabbing onto that, that rope in the last second to catch things and climb back up. And we started climbing and the next year was amazing. We grew like by multiple X's on profit and on revenue. And that also led to the future like acquisition. I think that was like probably the most important decision I've made for the company at the time. And thereafter, right around that point, I became the CEO of the company. It was like also a moment of like, oh yeah, COVID hit, and we did all this. Here's the keys, and it was a good one. But
They left you with the upswing.
So it was a good moment there, but I've learned a lot from it, and like as a team collectively, we did an amazing job of turning things around, and it's like really like a character building moment that I think was the biggest one for me.
It's interesting, one of the very interesting things that we're talking about right now is the fact that you've kind of scaled yourself up in this business, right? You have came in as kind of a mid-level, then moved into CMO, and then was given the CEO title. That alone is something that not many people can aspire to do, and so that should be commended. But because you had that...
Like correction, I came in as a junior level employee.
Junior level. Oh yeah. You
completely junior level.
So that's even better. More power to you. But because you came in at that junior level, you actually were able to see the entirety of the process all the way through from both sides of the coin. And when you got to that point where you were forced to look at, what you guys are actually doing correctly, which is, I think, something all CEOs should be looking at not only what you're doing poorly, but what you're doing right, and being able to kind of keep that in the back of your head, because a lot of the times when we're forced to look at these pivots, it's not necessarily what you think, right? It's not like, that's not necessarily what your thought was, like, hey, we're going to go make newsletters. But to your point, you were good at it and there was a need. Does the market actually need what you're looking for? Or are you trying to sell them something that they already have? Like, selling peaches to Georgia is not necessarily something that's going to be good. And so by looking at it and seeing that, hey, there is a need for this niche that we do well at, you were able to pivot and take the company into a way that is focusing on something that you had the opportunity to build out of, which that, I think every CEO has faced, multiple times over with scenarios where, like, everything that you've said is it's a perseverance story of the company. And there are multiple times that I think people with less metal would have just been like, all right, that's it. If you want to give me these keys, you can have them back. I don't want these keys right now. Anyway, that's a great segue into the next section of the podcast, though. And this is a section that we love to call the scaling secrets. So in Scaling Secrets, we talk about what it is in the magic dust that you can put on your company and how you are able to move and grow and make the decisions to allow yourself to scale. So let's talk about where you are right now. HomeTalk has been acquired. You're sitting in a position, doesn't sound like you're trying to be stagnant in that position. You're always looking for the next thing. So when you talk about scaling, what's your vision for the future and where do you see HomeTalk in the next 5 to 10 years?
Right. So my vision for the future is that we are going to be the best newsletter company in the world. And basically, I think that, going back to our story as far as what has made us great, like alongside obviously a lot of luck and as we like to say, the help of God, but a lot of luck and good skill. I think that what we did really right is we focused on portions of our business that we are very, very good at, like in comparison to the industry. And when I think about sort of like, okay, where we're going and why I'm clear-eyed about it is because one, it's worked like over the past few years. And two, I'm leaning in on something that I have the manpower for, I have the excellence for, and I'm able to execute. And because of those components, I'm very clear-eyed on our vision, and I'm very clear-eyed on how we're going to get there and how we're going to do that. And it's something that we're constantly working towards. We don't have a moment in time where we're basically just sitting there and, doing same old. We're always searching for the next thing, the next pivot, because if I look at our history, it's something that's just been proven over time. And every time we've been faced with something, we're already ready, meaning we're already ready for that thing to happen, because of, the prep that we were doing for the next thing. So if I were to answer that question cleanly, we're going to be the best newsletter publisher in the world, God willing. And I really believe that hopefully that's going to happen in light of the amazing team that we have, the amazing DNA that we have, the tech, and so on and so forth.
What does it take for you to get there?
Stars to align, for starters. There are some things that need to align and some things that need to work. Some hypotheses that, we're making that need to be proven correct, which we're always working on, because we work in a very lean type of methodology, meaning we try to prove out our hypotheses very early on to prove or disprove that this is the right direction, like a true product mindset. I think having the right content strategy for various different directions, and some great people, meeting some great people, and hopefully no gigantic pivots that crush us along the way, which is always something that can happen. It's you have to that's the part of or whatever you'd call it, because you can do your best plans and then something happens and boom. And that's part of the game. It's part of the game. You're not only dependent on yourself, especially in the media landscape. Publishers are always whining about what just happened. And yes, okay, it's fine. You got to get it out of your system. But at the same time, it's inevitable. It's inevitable, and it's always been inevitable. Like, if it's not like, Facebook was ramping up in the 2010s, that got whacked. Then it was like video was ramping up until like a year or two ago, and that also got hit. There was, Google for a long while, and recently, publishers that are relying on Google are suffering a lot. And there's always something, right? There's always something that's going on, and it's just inevitable that that's going to happen. So, like, if I think about the components, those are the components. But like, there's also a factor of like, I hope it works.
Well, this is an aside, but I think that the next big frontier for this is going to be LLMs and GEO. Generative engine optimization and large language models, and the ad space therein is it's coming. It ain't gonna be free for long,
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's great. I think that that's an awesome way to be looking at it and to be thinking about it, and having that goal, having that North Star is huge to be able to continue to drive that team forward and making them ready and being prepared. Using lean methodology and having the ability to test hypotheses is something that I would like to do more with my team. And so I may take a page out of your book there. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. We talked a little bit about this next segment already, and this segment's called the Market Edge. The segment of the Market Edge goes into what you're doing to stay ahead in your industry. So let's talk quickly about the future and kind of expand on that last response. But how do you see your industry trending in the future, and what's one trend that we need to be looking out for?
Yeah. In media, and I've seen this like pivot specifically in the media landscape for quite some time. Like, there's been this constant pivot that you have to like sort of like watch out, otherwise you get stuck between the maze walls in a sense. And in the 2010s, as I was highlighting, it was like, social, and all the social platforms were giving traffic, and then that went away like alongside with Facebook. Like, it was Facebook and up until 2018, it was Pinterest up until 2020, 2021, and there were various different things that were happening. What happened next was okay, everybody's now fearing, Google because of AI and so on and so forth. And the social platforms pivoted from sending you traffic to giving you reach and videos. And that was monetizable up until a point. And then Facebook saw that TikTok was doing, which was democratizing video and not paying anybody. So Facebook said, I'll take a page off of that book and I'll do it for myself as well. So all these things have been moving. One thing that has pretty much remained constant when I look at the trend here. And the trend here that has remained constant is, net new has become like very hard to get, right? Getting the customers and the distribution for your product, whatever you're selling. If you're selling like a water cooler, or you're selling, you're selling content and trying to get attention span, right? Like, in the publishing landscape, right? You're not actually selling content. It's the trade-off of like, you're giving the users content, they're giving you attention, and you're selling that attention to advertisers. It's that triangle. Whatever it is that you're selling, you need to like have a good distribution game plan. And the media landscape for some time now has been pivoting toward this direction of SEO and paid. Like, it's been pivoting towards there for a while, and like, okay, we all see like sort of like SEO is trouble in a sense because of like AI. But like, those who are able to do SEO well may thrive even in this environment. And AI and basically a paid acquisition also has become more, because if nobody's giving you anything for free anymore, from the social channels to like a Google, like in search, then you have to like figure out the art of understanding how to do paid acquisition and how to do it well in order to like really, build that line of your business to continue to grow. So when I think about our industry, about the publishing industry, it's like you have to master a certain factor of paid acquisition. You have to have, your hands in like, all pies in a sense, like of different social channels, and be able to monetize those and so on and so forth. But it really narrows down to like paid acquisition and SEO. The second being problematic, but the first being a very strong must.
Yeah. Interesting. It carries us into the next section of the podcast well, in understanding, we've talked over the course of what you guys are currently doing well. We talked about what the future is going to hold for you and how you're going to need to do even better in some of these spaces. Aside from being the world's best newsletter provider and creator, the next section of the podcast is called Hitting the Mark. In this section of the podcast, we like to ask what your company is doing to really knock it out of the park. We know that you guys make excellent newsletters, and we know that you guys are nimble and agile. What is one other thing, in taking into consideration all the past and the future that you're moving toward, that you guys are really doing well at this moment?
So I think, when I think about like the two factors that you mentioned, first and foremost, newsletters and just remaining nimble and agile, I think that like that's exactly where it's at, right? Like in a sense, like why are we gonna like succeed is because we have the pieces in order to make that happen. Meaning we have the tech, we have the people, and those two things together with a great strategy are gonna make that happen. That's why like I believe that we will be successful. Now, the nimbleness like is sort of like a second piece of this when you think about it in a sense, because if I were to say like, why does a company succeed or fail? There's a lot of luck in it and a lot of industry like movement and things that happen that are out of your control. But to give yourself the best odds, like you need to like have that DNA as a company of like being able to like move fast on opportunities, shift and pivot. And you have to have the right team to execute well. Meaning, and I think that when I think about our company and why I believe and hope that things should turn out well for us is because we have a great strategy on what we're executing. We have the ability to execute it well, but we also like have hands in the fire as far as like our ability to like cook up other things in tandem and in parallel so that we're always ready for the next thing. And we work properly as far as execution, meaning in a lean methodology as far as like testing new things and really understanding them. And if we see signals that work, we jump on it and we execute and we build it quickly. We just have this track record of being able to do that. So I think that those two things together are really what like our secret sauce is. Yes.
The implementation, to wrap that together, taking those two items, because separately they are great, but you have to be able to incorporate the two of them and make them work in concert in a manner that is going to move the bottom line. And that's the implementation and the action.
The execution of things, because ideas are cheap, right?
Yeah.
Like, and at the end of the day, like what we have going for us, which is like, I think that most successful companies try to do this. They have their core business and they're doing that well. But at the same time, they have this experimentation segment of the business where it's like they're always like ideating, testing, executing. And like if you have those two aspects within your business, you should be able to succeed. Like obviously barring catastrophe, but like you should be able to succeed all the time and running your core business and looking for the next things. It's like how many super successful companies, obviously not to compare ourselves, Amazon and many others have, built out a core part of their business and then had an exploratory arm looking for the next thing, building out that thing, proving out that hypothesis in a lean way and executing against it.
Yeah. Well, and Bezos, he chose books because it was something that you could ideate off of and run and test from. He didn't ever have like the desire to just be in books. It was the starting point.
Yeah.
If I was going to compare you to anybody, I would probably say Nike. I feel like you're on Nike's level more than Amazon, if I'm being honest.
Oh, I'll take
just
that.
do it
I'll take that as a huge compliment.
Well, cool. Thank you. Thank you for giving us that insight. And I definitely think implementation and execution are very huge components to being able to drive growth in a company. And without it, you really can't instill or move past the place you may find yourself at. So that's a great answer. Moving on to our signature segment, the best bad advice. So in the best bad advice, this is where we ask you, what's one piece of advice that someone has given you in the past that they swore by and you decided not to take and you were way better for following your gut?
This is a good one. I'm not going to mention any names though. So basically, going back to that pivotal moment in 2020, where we basically decided to pivot into, HomeTalk DIY. This is our core focus. We understand home and garden. That's what we do. Forget about the fact that you have content. Okay, build something on it. That was the strategy back then, right? And I wanted to I said, okay, what are we doing? We're launching more newsletters. We're launching food and this and whatever. And I remember I came to some people I respected, one of them's my mentor, and another one's some very respectable personality. And I came to them with this idea, and they both were one of them was like, this is a garden path. And the other guy was like, what are you guys doing? And at the end of the day, each of them had their perspective and their deep vision around things. And that was a moment there. I was like, am I really blowing this up? And it was a tough moment because it was it was the beginning of my, initial phase of okay, I'm the CEO now. I need to decide things. And I was still I was very humble because I come to these people for advice, and I was like, okay, am I really missing something here? Am I gonna take this company and into the ground? But I was confident about what I was about to do because I came from the bottom up, and I really understood the business really well. And because of that, even in light of that feedback that I got from two individuals that are really amazing, I basically decided to stay the course. And staying the course is pretty much also what got us sold, and also what made the company into what it is today. And yeah, it's very interesting because that was a moment of I was very okay, am I doing something wrong here?
Yeah.
It felt very humbling in a sense, because they must know better than I do, but I stayed the course together with the team, and it worked out. So obviously, but it was really really great to I guess prove them wrong. No, I mean,
Yeah.
it was really great to find that that validation, the fact that I really knew the business that I was running.
Well, what you just talked about there is common threads, and almost every single CEO I've talked to in this podcast has brought this up. It's fear of failure and imposter syndrome. Specifically,
Yes,
you're like, "Dude, I just
100%.
got these keys. I don't want to wreck the car. But the reality is that trusting in yourself is the hardest damn thing that you can do. You're driving this ship, and I'm making all these analogies here. You're steering the ship and driving the car, and you're like, shoot, am I going the right direction? And then you ask the person that made the map, nah, man, you're not. You're going the wrong direction.
You're off road. You're about to go off
Yeah.
a cliff.
There's a cliff right there. I can only imagine what that did to you too, because you're like, oh, geez,
Yeah,
I have made
yeah,
bad choices. But
yeah.
to the point, trusting in yourself, trusting in your gut, we find ourselves in these roles because we've had that intuition and have trusted ourselves to know that we can make it work. Being able to trust in yourself and know that, the decisions you're making are important and valid is so huge in this role. So huge. And
It took a long time to build that up. It
sure,
took a
I'm still
very long
building it
time
up.
until today. Till today, I question myself all the time, and that is part of the beauty of being able to be able to be flexible with yourself and not take yourself too seriously, and understand that the whole idea is learning from others.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing this. That's why you're on this podcast. It's having the ability to share this with people who are sitting out there in the audience going, damn, I screwed up. So no, that's a beautiful statement. It really is nice. And it's a great story to tell, in, being able to trust yourself. That's a really good piece of advice, but let's move into the final section of the podcast. And this segment is called the takeaway shot. So if you had to leave our listeners with one other piece of advice, what would it be? What's the most important piece of advice you could leave our listeners with?
Well, it's hard for me to distill it down to one thing, because when I look at obviously it's coming from my own personal prisma of how I'm thinking about things. But if you stay humble and and, constantly like humble and work hard and be curious. Those things together are something that leads to, constantly pushing yourself, like having a hunger and finding things along the lines of curious, staying humble, like, not taking yourself too seriously, because that blocks you off from receiving like other ideas and seeing things, and, not like, oh, whatever. No, like you are, and that's like part of our DNA as a company. You're part of the company. You're just another employee and working alongside others, and you have to make the tough decisions at the end of the day. But like, being a receiver, being able to receive things and being open to receiving things, and working hard and pushing yourself to like get over that hump. Because when you're on an up ramp, like you have to drive the car a little bit faster to get over that steep, uphill, in order to get into that zone where you're really cruising. And, when I put those three together, those have been the most important like components that have helped me throughout, like over time. And it obviously helps if you get really good at something and you focus on continuously developing and honing that skill and honing that craft, which is certainly something I've done here, which has made my work a joy. Meaning, when you make your work a joy, you never work a day in your life, as they say. So you asked for one, I gave you four. But I think that those things have really made it for me over the years, like to really make this into a magical journey for myself, and together working alongside my team. It's really been amazing.
That is an excellent answer. And I appreciate taking four instead of one, because like you said, you can't be too prepared. You got to be agile. You got to pick which one they want to go with, right? Ezra, so that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being on here, and I look forward to seeing what the next pivot or transition that HomeTalk is going to make under the VerticalScope housing, and seeing how you guys become the world's best at what you guys do. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much, Justin. Pleasure.
This has been a masterclass in digital community building, engagement, and the evolving landscape of online platforms. I appreciate you sharing your insights on what it takes to grow and sustain a thriving digital ecosystem. For everyone listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can check out VerticalScope's platforms to see community building in action. And if you're in the world of DIY, home projects, or creative hobbies, HomeTalk is the place to be. Ezra, thanks again for being here. And to all of you listening, keep aiming high and breaking through. Hit the bullseye. This has been Bullseye Breakdown. Catch you on the next one.